I think the lessons I learned were not about the process of selling the company and getting it acquired and what all those finances were. It's what happens when you're like an entrepreneur who's most likely unemployable. I'm unemployable. And you end up selling your company into this huge conglomerate. And I always say they buy you because you're like a butterfly, and they're like excited and they want to get you. And then you get in there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's rules. And so that was probably my biggest learning, is that just to know yourself as an entrepreneur. Are you somebody who wants to build an exit and go into a larger entity, or do you want to build an exit and then walk on to your next venture? So my first exit was really small, but it changed the trajectory of my life by understanding it. I actually had started a company called GlobeScope Internet Services, which we built websites for embassies, which I know now sounds like archaic, but at the time it was amazing and super cutting edge. I had a fabulous partner. And I sold that business for $50,000 18 months in, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but it was super cool. And we went to the law firm and we celebrated it. And that's the first time I learned everything. Like we self-funded that company. So it was just a really cool process to be like, wow, how did I sell it? What did I do? And from there, I started the ProMark agency, which was my bigger, much bigger exit.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. So I want to go back to your first exit. Were there any lessons learned or things that you look back on now that you've had multiple exits since then, and you're like, I should have done that differently?
Well, just like my good friend Lisa Odenweller was on here, every business is different. How you fund it, how you exit it, how you sell it. I mean, I was 31 years old when I exited the ProMark agency and sold it to WPP, which was a series acquisition. So whatever happened was all good because I didn't know anything going into it. It was much harder to take the company that I had built and integrate that company into a completely new entity.
Okay, so you sold ProMark agency back in year 2000. What was next for you?
What I'd done after I exited that agency, and sold in, is I thought I was going to be an investor. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned. And it actually takes to what I'm doing today, where I started my own little fund and I started investing, and I literally lost all of it. I think I lost $1 million in 12 months. Like, it was just unbelievable. And the reason for that is, Felina, I'm an entrepreneur. So everybody who came in to pitch me, I loved them. I loved their business. I loved everything they had to tell me. And it's because I looked at it through the lens of a builder. Like, I'm thinking to myself, well, I could build that. I could build this. I could build that. And what happened is they all went bust in like just a heartbeat of a second. And I had my beautiful fancy office in Georgetown. And I sat there going, the heck just happened? One of the companies was a swimwear company. Okay. And so of the 5 companies, I said, let me take one of them and try and figure out what to do and how to recoup my money and get back in running the company. And that's what I did. And that became AXM Swimwear. And we built that very, very quickly and sold that to Modaplaya, which was a company in Mexico.
Awesome. Any lessons learned in that process?
Yeah, figure out whether you're an entrepreneur or you're an investor. I'm definitely an entrepreneur. And from there, I actually became one of the first female members of the womenangels.net network in Washington, D.C. And then I learned, like, what should I do? I am not a single investor. Like, I'm really good in a group. And I'm doing that with San Diego Angels Conference. I love to hear other people. So my lesson was stick to what I know, which is building, funding and building companies. But I want to give back as an angel, and I'm better to do that supervised.
I like that. Okay. Awesome. I do want to dial in one question there, selling to Modaplaya, a company based out of Mexico. That's yet a whole nother layer of negotiations and I'm sure a different style of negotiations. Any lessons learned in that acquisition?
Yeah, what's interesting is that that's a company I really just wanted to get rid of. And I think when you, and I love this series you're doing, by the way, because it's to my passion of helping women build and sell companies. It's not easy, it's hard, it's ugly, the turns don't always go the right way. It's okay. Like, it's okay that it doesn't work out. It's okay that things that you get in a business that you wake up and go, I freaking hate this company. Like, I don't want to run it anymore. So I ended up running that company, but I didn't like swimwear. I didn't like the cash flow management, the technical aspect. So we built it in 18 months with a very specific goal in mind. And I identified the company to sell it to while I was building it. So that's a different topic, but I build every company to sell them, or I wanted to. So I think about who's going to buy it, right? Who's going to buy it? What do they need? Why do they need my company?
Awesome.
And I identified companies outside of the US because nobody in the US needed my little swimwear company, right? They were really big. So I'm like, the only person that's going to need it is somebody outside of the company or country who wants to be in it. And so we opened up the type of retail outlets that they would want. They wanted in Nordstrom, they wanted in everywhere but water, kind of those things. And then they could come in and bring their really big companies on top of it. So I had identified Mexico. I flew to Mexico, a very different negotiation process. So you just have to understand what it is. That was a lot of dinners and conversations and, hanging out for hours and hours. And it was, painful, but beautiful. And it got done.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let's go on to your next business, the beauty company.
Oh, probably my favorite of all the companies. So I was pregnant with my third child, and Rebecca Vaughn, who has been my right hand in all these companies. We sat down and I was like, I love the beauty industry. Let's do something in the beauty industry, which we had not done. And so I'm about 8 months pregnant, and we're sitting in my house and we have this blank piece of paper. And I'm like, well, we're really good at reports and research and knowledge. And so let's just start that. And so we started that company from scratch, sitting there. I was also going in my bedroom having to take naps, by the way. So listen, it's all good. Again, that was all these companies, which is interesting, were self-funded to this point. And after this company, we're going to talk about how I started raising capital, which is, I think, a really interesting transition. That the beauty company was the beauty company and the benchmarking company conceptually together. So we were a consumer research company. We built the largest group of female consumers in the country at that point. And we created the Pink Report. And then I started developing beauty brands for companies like Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, and then a bunch of entrepreneurs. I did massive licensing deals with Sony. I love soap operas. I love TV, and I loved Young and the Restless. We watch it at college. And so I said, Jabot Cosmetics is the fictional cosmetic company of Young and the Restless. People might not know that. And so we did a huge $5 million deal, which was the first time I really raised capital with Sony, and we launched that within the company. I loved everything about that brand. And I think I had that one company the longest, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And then talk about that acquisition.
So here's why that had to happen. And this is interesting. As a company, I probably would not have wanted to sell. So there were two parts of it, the consulting development of the brand, and then the big research component. My husband at the time we needed to move to Germany for him to run a big part of his business. And I needed to exit the company. I had amazing acquisition offers on the consulting side. But those are with big companies. So think of like a McKinsey or a Bain, and I had to stay with them. And I couldn't do that moving to Europe. So I had to slice the company in half. And the part of it that really was solid was the research company side of it. And then I was able to engineer an acquisition with my best friend. So she has always worked with me and around me. And I said, this is a great company. And we came up with a whole financing option, which I'd never done before. And I said, let's do that. And if you look that up, that is an incredibly successful company today. And she's very successful. And I'm really proud of her and happy that we did that.
Wow, that's awesome. You have literally had so many experiences. You've covered every category, sale to a friend, sale to a multinational, sale. This is awesome. I love it.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So you went to Germany. What was next?
Well, I was going to take some time off, but my family was like, wow, mom, you know, everything is super organized and nobody wants to do any more trips. You need to start something. So I called some of the great, amazing talent, my tribe of women, and I said, let's start Coastal Salt and Soul. But for this company, I raised a good bit of money for it. And it was a luxury bath and body company and apparel and all things that are like beautiful and ocean. And I had a home in Manhattan Beach for many, many years where I spent all the summers with the kids. And I really used that as an inspiration point. And we created this phenomenal brand while I was in Germany, but the team was based in Manhattan Beach. So that was my first time kind of managing internationally and raising money. And that's the first time I did everything wrong that you could do to raise capital. Like everything that's wrong, I did. And then finally, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And then I moved back to the US. I took that brand onto QVC. We were really successful. We were making money and I still couldn't raise anything. And so then I went and really talked to a lot of people that had raised and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong. And then I raised a couple $1 million pretty quickly after I re-engineered that and then sold that to Beauty Partners, which is an amazing company who does private label for Target and all kinds of brands. And it's interesting why they wanted the company. They wanted it because we had a massive distribution into boutiques. I think we were in about 500 boutiques and I had a beautiful show on QVC and they needed that for something they were doing, which goes to the acquisition thing. Who needs you and why do they need you? And so I was tired of traveling back and forth to Pennsylvania. Even though that's where I was born and raised, but to manage all of my children and do the QVC show, it just wasn't possible for me in my lifestyle. And so that's why I exited that company.
Makes sense. You alluded to making some mistakes and raising money the first time around. Would you share some of that advice, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is my passion, which we can get into having done all this. My passion is the fact that only 1.6% of all funding in this country went to women-owned businesses last year, which is down from 4%. And I honestly have to say, I didn't realize that I had raised so much capital. I didn't realize that what I did was different or interesting until about a year ago. And that's why my passion now is working with female entrepreneurs to create the pitch and the presentation to get it funded and to get it sold, because those are the two things I like to do. And it's based on everything I learned that went wrong. And the first thing, I'll give you the big three. Number one, it's not about your product. Bummer, right?
You worked so hard.
To raise my first 2 million, I did make over 500 calls, over 200, like what I would call good meetings, and I raised not a dime. And that's because I actually was demonstrating the product, like I was on QVC. And let me tell you about this, and it smells good. And let me tell you about the throw, and let me tell you about my packaging. And you know, I forgot, you know, when you're at this point in your life, in your game, and you're asking people for money, they're going to assume your product works, right? That it tastes good, that all those elements are good. So if you take 9 out of 10 of the minutes that you have to talk about something that they don't really know or care that much about, you've lost. And that's what I kept doing. I had an amazing mentor who said, you need to stop talking about your product. Don't even bring your product to the pitch. Don't bring it. So that's number one. And number two is confidence and smiling and positivity. Like they're betting on, when you get to the third part, which is it's all about the numbers. If they assume you've got a great product, and they assume, and you show them the numbers, then they're betting on you. Do they want to talk to you? Do they like you? Are you smiling? Are you confident? You know, right now I'm in the process with one of these investment funds and people are standing up, they're giving their 60-second pitch, which is my favorite thing to work with people on. And like half the people are like, they look like they're scared to death and they're not smiling. And that makes me not like really feel like I'm going to give you my money. So those are the three things I changed. And when I went in and I started doing my pitches, I did 10 slides instead of 50 slides. I didn't bring my product. And I said, let me tell you the problem. Let me tell you the solution. Here's the numbers and here's how I'm going to make you money. And that was it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. So one thing you said, Alisa, is that connection, right? If you're thinking about investing in somebody, it's the connection that you have with them, right? You're betting on the jockey, not the horse, as they always say. But I think therein lies the problem a lot of times when you have male investors. We talk a lot about this, the pattern recognition, right? Like I see myself in this person, and that's easier to do for a male investor to, a potential male entrepreneur.
Well, no doubt. And we can get into, that I got into liquor and I got into it to raise the capital and to prove that that worked. And frankly, it did.
Yeah.
Because I was talking about something that 99% of the people that were going to give me the money completely understood.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. So let's go on to that. Spa Girl cocktails.
Right. So we exited, I think it was Coastal and then Spa Girl. So there's a lot of elements of this of Spa Girl that are utterly fascinating when you look at like the trajectory of like my professional career. I've always either funded it myself or I raised, but I was the founder. And what I decided is there was this opportunity with Spa Girl with this amazing founder, Karen Haynes, and an amazing product. And I became a hired gun for the first time in my life. I became maybe not as traditional hired CEO, but at the end of the day, not my idea. I always say that I worked for the most visionary, amazing founder who came up with an A+ idea. And my ideas have all been like B minus. Like really, like they're all right. They were good product, but like I executed on an A level. But her product was like, wow, this is an A level product and brand, and I wanted to do it. So for the first time, I raised a lot of capital and ran a company for someone else with the idea of an exit for all of us. And that was Spa Girl Cocktails, which and we see them all around the offices. I brought my team with me. I have my little tribe, about 5 people that have gone through a number of companies with me. We didn't know anything, but we certainly knew this was the right product. It really, in some way, was the merge of beauty and everything we had done into liquor, which I knew men knew and understood. And so I think all in, we were probably 10.5 million raised over a very short period of time. COVID came in and completely changed that business plan, which, we don't have to talk about, but it knocked it out. I had to raise more capital than I wanted, but I did it on exactly what we talked about before. I went to many, many meetings. I never brought the product. A lot of the investors never saw the product. And that's really hard. It was interesting to be with a founder who wants you to taste the product, right? And I get that. And it makes a lot of sense. But that's like almost when you're ready to write the check. And there's a lot I learned in that raise and what we needed to do and the selling of that. I exited that last January. There is a real board of directors, as you can imagine, very much like Lisa talked about. And the interesting thing about that particular exit, which is why I actually will never be a hired gun CEO again, is that when it came time to sell and exit it at certain, let's say, milestones, the founder, Karen, who had every right to do that, of course, chose, like, I don't want to exit at this, or I wouldn't want to do that. Or you look at all those different elements, or the board. I mean, not necessarily her, but you have a board. And that's a whole other book about managing a board. My first time managing a big board, and they chose to make certain decisions along the way. And I wanted to be an in and out 18-month CEO, as you can imagine. And it was a beautiful exit for all of us, where I said, you want to keep going and, move it on to a different level, but I want to get back to building my own companies again. So that was yet again, a different type of exit and a really interesting one.
Yeah.
And to just know that I'm a build it and sell it kind of girl on those type of businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what are you doing now, Alisa?
A couple of things.
Yeah.
So we haven't announced a lot of it out yet, but I took some time off, which was great. And I worked with some amazing biotech and FemTech entrepreneurs, and I created their pitch decks and their funding and their stories. And it was really just to do something and have fun doing it. And I realized, like, I love this. And we've raised, I think, about $50 million in 6 months in those companies. So I'm like, this really works. So I'm going to do 3 things. One, I have a company called For the Love of Lemons, and we're very specific, and we just got started and we are really booked out, which is fabulous. We're working with female entrepreneurs. Not that we don't love men, but we know women. I am on a mission to work with female entrepreneurs to help them craft the story and the process to get it funded. And the whole thing, everything that I've learned, and a lot of women in my circle, because if only 1.6% of women are getting the money, we need to change it. And one of the reasons that, 46%, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but 46% of all female businesses fail within the first 12 months. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they fail for lots of reasons, but I would bet money's probably the biggest one. Don't run out of cash. And so I want to do that. Like, I'm going to work with women, and we're going to give microloans to women who can't afford our services, just like all kinds of things. I'm building an investor database of people who I know understand women-owned businesses and what we can do. And so that's the big thing. Also, Rebecca Vaughn, who's been my amazing right hand, I said to her, that's it. It's time for you to own something with me. Like, my team always makes money when we exit, but I don't want that. Like, I want her to be an owner. So her and I have just purchased a company that people are going to hear about that is going to change the face of San Diego. That's all I can tell you. We also bought Palm Springs and what we're doing there. So we're going to have a huge announcement probably like in a month. And I've invested in it and I'm an owner, but Rebecca is the primary owner and she's going to run it. So I'm really happy about that. And then I've got lots of other little, like, just investments and businesses and things that I'm enjoying. But my goal is, as usual, to build Lemon Grove. I've told so many lemon companies.
I know.
For the love of lemons into something. And obviously it's all about, like, turning the sour into sweet. It's hard, right? Every woman you have, I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and I'm so grateful that you do this. And I love Hero Hub, right? On so many levels, because we need to encourage women. You can do this, but it's the tribe that will really help you get there. And, I learned that in raising money too, by the way. It is a lot about who you know.
Yeah.
And how to teach women to know that. Who are the family offices? Who are the VCs? At what stage do you raise? How do I open those doors? How do we make those connections? And we have to do that as a tribe.
Absolutely. Amazing. I'm so excited to see what you're building, Alisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.